Hello, everyone, and welcome to Miniature Wargaming Labs. I'm Brian,
I'm James.
and today we're going to be doing We Discuss for what's the game, James?
You might have heard this, Blackstone Fortress.
Well, what gaming company was that?
That is Games Workshop, and you might have noticed on this channel, I've done some of the reviews of some of the sets I have. So Blackstone is one of the games out of Games Workshop that I am a completionist on. So I know it's taken us a while to get around here, but we're finally reviewing Blackstone Fortress.
And actually, Blackstone Fortress is the reason we're doing this. This whole video channel is because of Blackstone Fortress.
Well, that's an interesting way to put it. I think we both talked about what we did and didn't like about YouTube, and we were getting a lot of Blackstone sets in, and so he said, we should really talk about this game. And of course, several months in, we're finally talking about this game.
We almost beat the game too. I mean,
No one beats Blackstone Fortress.
you don't beat Blackstone Fortress.
If you really want to win, you have to cheat. Let's be honest.
We only cheated once or twice or five times.
You can have some interesting rule interpretations of how it goes.
Yes. What's the theme of this game?
So you have to be pretty deep into Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 lore about what a Blackstone Fortress is. So Blackstone Fortresses are these large super structures that no one knows where they came from. They have incredible power and they float around. So the idea of this box set is that the Eye of Terror is ripped open. That's changed the warp currents. And so outside the known galaxy, right on the border, there's a new pocket of space that can now be explored. And someone's found a previously undiscovered Blackstone Fortress. So the idea is that it's like a boom mining town. So everyone's making a rush to be the ones to claim this Blackstone Fortress. And you have your little town of Precipice that floats around the structure made up of the scrap ships that have collected over the millennia. And so they've built this town, and it's your job to adventure through the fortress.
Nice. So unlike a lot of the other games that we talk about, this is more of a self-contained game. So what do you need to play this game?
So no matter what, you're going to have to buy the box set. So you're right. Most of these games, you buy a rule book, and we can normally cobble together what you need to play out of our existing sets. So if you want to play Frostgrave, Rangers of Shadow Deep, Zona Alpha, we have enough miniatures to where we can throw something together. So this is a box game. So this comes out of Games Workshop's Box Game Studios, conveniently enough. So it's like they've done Warhammer Quest, which was traditionally done in like the Age of Sigmar, and they only did one box set. They've now done Blackstone Fortress, so they sell you a main box set, which for the miniatures you get into it is a really good price if you divide the price by the number of miniatures you get. And then they sell expansions on after that. So technically you just buy the core box and you can play through the scenario that's provided in the core box and you're good to go. Everything you need, except the stuff you need to hobby the miniatures together, like the sprue cutters and the glue and everything. But the dice you need, the tiles you play on, the rule books, it's all contained in that box set. Now we've discussed we could use some more dice.
Yes.
Just because when you're rolling a lot of dice, if you get enough bad guys on the board, you could probably use a few more dice, but we made it work until we got that extra set of dice from that other box.
But the miniatures are great. I mean, for the box that you get a ton of miniatures, and you get Trader Guardsmen, you get Beastmen, you get all of the hero miniatures can be used in Kill Team. So it's a very versatile set of miniatures that you get in the box. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's something nice that they've been doing is that everything that's been coming out in Blackstone Fortress, has can be played in regular games of 40K, and they've also come up with kill team rules. Now they're either online, they're in a White Dwarf, or they're in like a kill team annual. You can eventually find the rules. Some of them are actually playable in Necromunda, so
which is super cool.
Well, that's the only reason I became a completionist, because I was just going to buy the core box to get the miniatures, and then I got the dreaded Amble because it was playable in Necromunda, and then it was downhill from there. Because once I bought one expansion, you had to buy them all.
You gotta get the rest.
They're like Pokemon.
Exactly, gotta get them all. So who should play this game? So you said you had to be pretty far in the lore to know what the theme of this game is. So who should play this game?
So I know this is actually a debate we had at the store right after it came out with Nick. Remember you took Nick through the game? Because he's a board game expert there. So I tried to decide on this game. Is this a true board game? Because I'm not a huge board game fan. Is this a true board game, or is this just a way to sell miniatures? Like to get you spend $160 to buy a box of miniatures and you'll just throw the cardboard away. Now, Nick didn't think it was a great board game. However, when you played this game, if you want to play Kill Team or get into Warhammer, like the main lines, I think when you play this game, it gives you a feel for how Warhammer plays. Now, as an introduction to tabletop skirmish miniature wargaming, I don't think it's the best one out there. I think Osprey does a good job of that. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to get into Warhammer, if you're someone who's into Warhammer and you want to bring other people into it, it's a great game to teach. It's a great way to teach them the flavor of the Warhammer style of tabletop wargaming, to work them into building full armies. And I guess, if you wanted to play, you've already got the essence of the start of a Chaos army with the Traitor Guardsmen on there, and you get a couple of Chaos Space Marines. You could build from there into a regular army, but you've already got the stuff to play a lot of Kill Team. So it seemed to bring you into regular skirmish games from a board game, which people might be more comfortable with, to teach you that flavor of how Games Workshop does tabletop wargaming.
Yeah, this is like step 1, and then Kill Team would be step 2, and then full 40K would be step 3, and then Apocalypse would be what you're playing in 2 years after that. That's the progression, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way they worked it out. Because I think we talked Combat Arena, which has a tie-in. Because remember, Combat Arena is just all the guys on the ship, training on their way to Blackstone Fortress.
Exactly.
That's a drop-in game. We could play that in 30, 45 minutes, get a game, move on. It's very quick to pick up. Blackstone Fortress is a level of complexity up from there. So that's why you could tell it's very much got that Warhammer 40K stamp on it. So it's not a generic game going in there. So, we were playing along with it, and, by the time you hit your first stronghold, you're out there feeling, okay, this is kind of like Kill Team on the way I'm rolling dice to attack, to defend, but it's their way to introduce you to their games, not to gaming in general.
Which, they have a lot of games, so that makes sense. So you mentioned that we needed extra dice. So that obviously means that we didn't use regular D6s. So how do the game mechanics work?
So when you set up the board and you look at it, there's 2 sections. There's Precipice, which is the little junkyard city, the mining town, really, boom town where everyone lives. And that's where your adventures, your party starts off with. And then they move in to the Blackstone Fortress, which is essentially your dungeon. So that's that classic trope of, here's the town where we equip and we rest and heal. Then there's the dungeon you go into. And so a lot of this is a card-driven mechanic. of deciding what does the dungeon look like, because it is pretty random as you try to collect artifacts to unlock your way to the strongholds. And there's always a set number of strongholds depending on what expansion you're playing, running anywhere from 3 to 5, and you have a story arc that you're trying to beat. So that's the top level 30,000 foot look at how this game's done. But the reason the dice became important is because once you go into the dungeon and you have like, okay, into the Blackstone Fortress, and you draw your card and you lay out the tiles to see where you're fighting, you pull out your character card and different characters on there. So there's like the shooty guys and there's the healer. Basically looks like a giant, we always call him the fat white pope on there. Yep. He's got the, I forget what bishops call that crown. But then you have like the flamethrower, the rattling snipers, because we ended up playing like the same guys. We always bring Tadius because he can heal.
He can heal.
But there's that idea is that when you look at their character attributes, they have different die. So it's very similar to how Star Wars Legion Fantasy Flight Games does their stuff, of where, okay, if you're trying to do this, roll the white die. If you're trying to do this, roll the blue die. And so a lot of it's driven by what kind of dice they use on them. And as you get wounded, you lose your ability to take actions as you're going throughout the game. And everything else is either card mechanic driven or the AI takes over. Now, it is a 4-person game. And if you have a 5th person, they take over the bad guys out there. So you can see the idea is that you have 4 adventurers go through and help each other out. If you have a 5th guy, they take over the Blackstone Fortress's defenses there. So it's actually an interesting mix for Games Workshop of a blend of specific die and a card mechanic to create randomness.
Now, there's a lot of flair with this game. I do love that, like, the lore around this game, like delving into, like, you have all these different characters. I mean, you have a sentient robot, which are completely outlawed in the Imperium, should kill on sight. You have Ratling twins. You have a Kroot missionary. You have a rogue trader. You have a ecclesiarch preacher. I mean, there's just so much like fluff and flair that goes into this game that it makes it really cool to play. And I think that's where this game really gets cool, is because it has all this stuff you don't see in regular 40K stuff.
Yeah, this game reflects the civilian world of the Imperium. So if it wasn't for like the Chaos Space Marine and the Traitor Guardsmen, no one else there is part of like a regular unit in 40K. So you're right, you've got like the civilians, the specialists, the wanderers, the traders, freebooters, the pirates in there. This isn't soldiers acting out, carrying out skirmishes. These are adventurers, and they really capture that. And like, this is a unique character. Like, this is Tadius the Purifier and Pius Vorn. This is Tomaz and Zaymot. I don't know what their real names are, but like the little rattling twins with the sniper rifle and the spotter, with a refrigerator on their back, eating apples. Yeah.
We kind of covered a lot of the unique features of this game. It's not just a book; it's a whole board game. But what are some other, like, how is the table setup? How is that unique to other miniature games?
So, I think one of the biggest issues of this game is you've got to get real good control of the space. So part of my biggest challenge is how to store everything and lay it out, because it can get confusing. Because you have a big piece of cardboard that's Precipice, and it has all your little ships. As you're playing expansions, you change out which little spaceships are up there. And then you need to maintain this big blank spot on the table. Because when you draw your encounter card and you get like a section of tunnels in the fortress, you're going to have to lay out your tiles there. And something we need to talk about is the way the books are done. Because there's like 5 pamphlet-sized books. And you can tell what they were thinking when doing this is every segment of the game is going to have a book. So if you're hanging around Precipice, pull out the Precipice book. If you're delving through the fortress, pull out your Combat Fortress book. But there's times where they interrelate, and I think we've sat there and said, I know there's a rule about this. What book do I need to look at? Because there's not just one book like you flip through. And of course, if you leave the table a mess, sometimes you misplace the book. So there's a little organizational chaos you've got to overcome. I know they're trying to make it a way for like new players to just say, not be intimidated by a giant book or just one book. But when you make it a bunch of books, it's like, which book do I need right now?
Exactly. This game is definitely, you definitely have to balance your pieces with the game, because you have to keep track of everything, because you pull that card, you pull the card for how the table is set up, and you have different cardboard pieces that you put together to build the board. So you have to keep those out, and there's a pile of those, so you have to keep those organized. You have to keep your books organized. You have to keep your miniatures organized, because you don't know what's going to be actually on the table in the dungeon when the dungeon is pulled. So it is definitely a feat of organization as well as gameplay.
Yeah, because I think there's a couple of those times, because the tiles are double-sided.
Yep.
So when you look at it, you've got to find the right shape and then find the right size to be facing up. And some of them are very repetitive in shape. So we've sat there and it's like, okay, not that one, not that one, not that one. Then which way do we orient it? So you've got to be organized when you lay it out, or it'll confuse you.
Yes.
I can imagine if you just cracked open the box, then popped everything out and said, okay, let's play. And you got like a little mound there. Because we've had that where, like, if you're trying to get through the game quickly, it's just take all the bad guys, just like scoop your arm into the bucket of miniatures. Like, okay, you sit right there. It's like, okay, I need 3 more drones. Well, we've run into that of where reinforcements show up on the board and we don't have enough drones, and the rules just say, well, I guess they're not there. It's like, yes.
Which is, I mean, if you want to buy extras, there's plenty online, or you could buy another set. But it does make it a lot harder if you conveniently run out of miniatures. Oh yeah, we don't have any cards. No, we don't. Just put those over there.
I'm not going to replace them with anything else. It's just not enough cards.
No. So how is the gameplay organized?
So you get that idea. You got to think of it as 2 parts: your time in Precipice and your time in the fortress. And you can really lay that out physically on the table when you're playing. So when you start out in Precipice, you enter the board and you draw 4 cards. And so there's going to be 4 cards for just, these are like your quick wandering through the tunnels and the floor collapses and you all have to roll dice. And so you defeat that challenge. And 4 of those cards are actually going to be dungeon tile setups, of where you have to go through and beat up the Trader Guardsmen or the Blackstone Fortress's drones in there. But the idea of what you're trying to do is there's actually a time mechanic to this. So this is actually where the resource balancing comes in, because every time you delve into the fortress and come back out, like a clock turns, like you lose a little bit of time. Or in the core book, it's like the threat level. So the more times you go into the fortress, the higher the threat level. At a certain point, there can be no threat and the bad guys win. Yeah. And every one of the expansions has something like this. So like the No Respite, the Plague Marine one, disease starts spreading to the point of where if you fill the disease counters in Precipice, everyone dies and you lose the game. So it really makes it to like, you've got to complete each one of these. And, you know, we talk about the stronghold. Well, all of these have some stronghold or altar, and there's normally 3 to 5 of them. And so you're trying to adventure to collect the artifacts or whatever keys you need to unlock the next stronghold, so you can beat up everyone there until you get to the final boss. So it's very Zelda, the old school Zelda, like that, wandering around trying to find the right keys to open up before you run out of time. Now, the nice thing about it is if a character dies, you just go back. And then like the core set has the base set of what, 10 characters. And then if you get escalation, you can add some more Imperial characters on there. Once you kill all of those guys off, you lose the game, or if you run out of time, you lose the game. So that's a nice thing about it, is you can switch off. It's like, I've tried this Rogue Trader, let me try Tadius, or I want to try the Rattling Twins. So you have a little bit of flexibility there, and each one is good at a different thing.
Mm-hmm. They've also gone through and added characters that you can discover in your travels.
Okay, so so this is something they added in the White Dwarf, and you can find in the annual, the retinue characters. So it's kind of like more of a mercenary that gets attached. So the AdMech, the Adeptus Mechanicus, Techno-Archaeologist, Daedalus, you can go in there, you beat this adventure, and you can unlock a servitor, get X101. And he'll come and escort you. So like when Daedalus takes a move, he can bring a servitor with him and gives you a little extra firepower. Mm-hmm. They also have an Olgrin and a Bullgrin. They have an Orc, so you can get an Orc mercenary on your side there. So and so as they've gone on, they used White Dwarf and some of the expansions as ways to add new flavor rules. That's actually something that's in the annual, is they've added like different districts inside Precipice, so that you can go to the gambling den of Precipice. So it's not just going to Precipice and taking all the treasure you found in the Blackstone Fortress and trading it for extra equipment or ways to unlock strongholds. You can now, I'm going to go see the Jokero, the little monkey people, and get healed. Or I'm going to go gamble a little bit. I'm going to go do some trading. You can actually go to the slums for whatever reason and see if you find something valuable there. So they've added little extra things to the adventure, kind of like little expansions.
Nice. So when you're building your team of heroes, how do you build them? Do you have a lot of customization with them? How do you build your team that goes into from the Precipice to the Blackstone Fortress?
So now let's talk about playing the team. So as I said, this is intended to be a 4-player game. Now, if you get the annual, there are actually rules for how to play it as a 3, 2, or 1-player game. So that's why we covered this. It has the potential of being a solo game, because you could set this out and you could play it by yourself. Now, traditionally, like when you and I played, we've just taken over the other 2 characters and said, okay, I'm going to I'll control 2, you control 2. If you just want to go solo, you can play a solitaire and go in there. But basically, you're getting a card, and I should have brought one up here with me. And that card has certain features on it, and you really can't customize the card. What you can do is go on adventures and find artifacts or pieces of equipment that you can either equip directly, or you go back and you trade it for equipment. And that's like a random draw. Like, did you get something that helps you become more punchy or more shooty, more defensive? They're either permanent or they're temporary objects. So the only way you can really customize the characters is by finding these extra artifact equipments to add on to them. There's no like saying, I want a +3 roll here, or +2 or +4. The character's the character and really captures the flavor of that character. The only way you can plus them up is by adding special equipment to them.
So really, this isn't like a regular board game. It's more of like a legacy game, or like a whole campaign system by itself.
Yeah, it fits into that Warhammer quest of this is an adventure with a very defined story arc. So it's not as free-flowing as D&D in character control and where the story arc's going to go. It's not adversarial like Kilting. So it pushes that boundary between what a skirmish game is, because it'd probably be more like Rangers of Shadow Deep. The idea of like, we're all going to get together and we're going to string together these random scenarios to an eventual goal where we fight the bad guy at the end. So there's a little bit more structure on the campaign system than Rangers of Shadow Deep has. So there's definitely a story arc you're following.
How does the campaign system work in this game?
Yeah, so that's where that time mechanic goes in, of where you're trying to delve into the Blackstone Fortress and you're looking for artifacts to unlock the strongholds. And normally every expansion story arc book has what the strongholds look like. So like when you do the stronghold in the main box, we're going to draw the 8 cards. We're going to go to the Blackstone Fortress. Hopefully we find enough artifacts that we can trade at Precipice to find the key to the first stronghold. Then we go down there, we beat everybody up, we come back, wash, rinse, repeat until we do all the strongholds. And then we get to the final, the 5th bastion where Obsidian Malix is hidden. Now that is something that they've done over the course of this game. At the point of this filming, there's escalation where Obsidian Malix is reborn and you got to kill him again. And pretty soon they're going to release Ascension whenever GW starts mailing stuff out again, of where Obsidian Malix comes back again. You're going to beat him up for the last time, and we'll see where the game goes after that.
This is like kind of like a board game where you have scenarios each time you open the box. So how would you build these scenarios as they go on for the campaign?
Yeah, so that's the interesting part about it is, so the idea of this game is built around those tiles. So they gave you so many tiles in the base box that with every expansion, every stronghold that you find, and you're just arranging the tiles in a different way as you fight. So you have to think about it. There's when you're in Blackstone Fortress, there's 2 parts. The random exploration as you're delving through the Blackstone Fortress, trying to collect artifacts, and then the actual strongholds. Now, I call them strongholds, but in each expansion, they have different terms. So like when you're hunting the Amble, there are different layers you're trying to find out. In Trader Command and the No Respite, they're basically different altars that you're trying to find. And in essence, they're just layout cards of what a room will look like as you try to beat up everyone in there. So there's the game is anchored on these fixed points. These strongholds or altars that you're trying to get to, and you'll have to go through these random generated rooms to find the stuff to get to those fixed points. So you could actually play a lot of the same scenario rooms over and over as you're trying to get to these fixed points that come with that particular expansion.
Yeah, you said that there's been a lot of expansions. So what is this game missing now?
When they created the original cast of characters, what was special is that it was a way to mix Imperial civilians with Xenos civilians. So you could have an Eldar Ranger, the ever popular Kroot mercenary, going around with AdMech guys, and the Silica Automata, the rogue AI out there. And with Escalation, they added more Imperial. They haven't added more Xenos in there that you can play. Now, I think with like the Kroot expansion, we're going to see a rare character come back from Warhammer lore. That's the super advanced alien. Now, with the retinue, they've added, like, you can get a Jokero retinue, get some orcs. But what they're missing is there's a whole cast of other characters, of races out in the galaxy that haven't been poured into the game yet.
Where do you hope this game goes?
So I know we've talked about this, and I know it's kind of a topic on Facebook and the interwebs on Reddit about Ascension being the end of Blackstone Fortress. Now, if you read the press release, Ascension is going to be the return of Obsidian Malix. That's going to be the end of the Blackstone Fortress story arc. Now, is it the end of the Blackstone Fortress game, or are they going to do a new story arc? So are they just going to come out and straight kill the game, say, that's it? Like what they did with Warhammer Quest. There's one main box. They never made an expansion. That's it. Came with that one box. They made a main box. They've done expansions. They're completing this overall story arc. Are they going to kill it right there, or are they going to keep on going? My thought is that Ascension will not be the last one, because they had an annual, and they keep on putting stuff out in White Dwarf. And knowing that Games Workshop does stuff 2 years in advance, if they did an annual for 2019, they probably have an annual for 2020, and they had a plan before COVID interrupted it. My guess is that with the end of the story arc of Obsidian Malix, probably what's going to happen is they'll have a new core box. They'll probably introduce a whole bunch of new Imperial and Xenos special character miniatures, and the only way to get them is to buy that core box. And then they'll start a new story arc. Maybe the Dark Eldar trying to take over Blackstone Fortress instead of Chaos. Maybe the Tyranids showing up on the fortress. Because they have plenty of other factions out there. And Blackstone Fortress is a great way to take specially crafted miniatures and then release them at a $20 higher MSRP because you surrounded them by cardboard that no one else wants unless they want to play Blackstone Fortress. So my thought is that Blackstone won't die. It'll just start a new story arc. Unless I'm wrong. But, you know, Games Workshop's always driven by the idea that since they make the miniatures useful in other areas of their games and other studios, that people just buy them for the miniatures and they accept the Blackstone markup there.
I mean, people will. People do. So let's wrapping up. And with our last two questions, why should you play this game? Why should I play this game?
So as a Games Workshop property, this is the only one I think of that you could play solo. I think there might be a Necromunda Fight the Monster one. You could probably rig into being solo. You know, you can use your Blackstone Amble to play the monster, and you've got to beat up the monster, and he randomly wanders around the board, and you can fight him. But as a solo play property, this is one. This is one that has a good fit. And if you're at home by yourself, you can play it solo-wise. You know, don't use the Blackstone Annual Fortress rules for solo play of going down to one character or play the solitaire. Just play all 4 characters. Have fun. Why?
Yeah, I mean, it's a co-op game.
Yeah, Games Workshop's enforcement division is very weak. I mean, if they try to come over here, we have way more guns than they do. But so it's got that solo feature. It also is a good way to practice that mindset of how to play GW skirmish games. How to hit, how to wound, how to defend. So it's a good way to introduce yourself to some of the other mechanic, like the philosophy behind GW games. Cool.
Why shouldn't I play this game?
Because it can be a mess. And unless you're going to put the time into it, you might leave frustrated as it's a mess. Because how long did it take us to really crack the nut of how to effectively go from precipice into the fortress, back out, and figure out the dynamics?
It took us at least 3 or 4 games.
It was 3 or 4 sessions before we got the hang. Yeah, so it is probably one of, you know, it's rich and detailed, but with that becomes a learning curve on it, and you better have the patience for it.
Yes.
If you don't have the patience to open up a box that will vomit cardboard all over your table, and then you have a bunch of little figures that you got to glue together and maybe paint up, this might not be the game for you. Because something we didn't talk about is like, so your guy collects all these artifacts and special equipment upgrades, and they go into this little sarcophagus. Remember, one of the features is supposed to be you can store away the game and bring it out later. But depending on how later is like, why did I put those little counters in that little bag there with that guy? What were we doing last time we played this?
What does this mean? Why do I have extra dice in here?
Why did I store it in that little bag? And where did I put where's my purple 12-sided die?
There is definitely some organization that you have to do with this game. So I could definitely see that. It is definitely would stop me because I like to organize my board games, but I also don't play a lot of board games. So it is, but it's a game that you have to take out all of the components for, and then you have to organize them all back to where you can remember them. So I definitely see that as a big negative against it.
Well, especially so I made a mistake of where I kept on buying the expansions. And so the nice part about the expansions is it's actually a way to add spice to the game because you can take stuff from Dreaded Amble and Traitor Guard and No Respite and add it to your main deck. So you could actually play the core set, but say, you know what? Why don't we add the Dreaded Amble as a potential random encounter? Of course, you mix all those cards in. Remember the problem we had is we were trying to beat the core game, and by stacking out the decks, we just made it harder to find the artifacts we needed to unlock the strongholds. So we
Yeah,
just
we only need to go through this one short corridor. Here's an amble.
Well, it's
cool.
Like
That's gonna kill us.
You had to keep on delving to find the artifacts to keep playing the to get to the stronghold. So
exactly,
you got to imagine deck management kind of an issue on there, because it's like I started mixing all the cards together, and they have little symbols on there for like which set and expansion they are on them. It's like, man, what did I mix in here, and do I really need it in here if I want to complete this level quickly?
All right, well, I think that wraps it up for Blackstone Fortress. Is there anything you want to add to this?
It's a good game, but in your gaming group, just pick the one guy who's going to buy all of it. So in ours, that's me. So I have all this stuff. It's a very specialized game. And that's why it used to be called the Specialist Game Studios. Now it's called the Box Game Studios. So if you're into it, go deep. If not, stay away, because it'll become a money suck.
All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up here. I'm Brian.
I'm James.
And everybody have a good day.
We'll see you next time.